Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a whole stack of sources you sent us about something I think we all know pretty well, overthinking.
Oh, yeah. Definitely familiar territory for, well, probably most people listening.
You know that feeling, right? Like your brain just turns into this runaway train, replaying stuff from ages ago or uh, jumping ahead to every possible bad thing that could happen tomorrow.
Hmm.
Or, and this one really hits home for me, you send a text, crickets, and suddenly your mind's gone full panic mode, like DEFCON 1.
Absolutely. It's that frantic mental energy, but you feel completely stuck, like you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
Your sources really nailed that paradox. It feels like you're solving problems, digging deep.
Yeah, like you're being super productive mentally.
Exactly. But it's actually, well, often the opposite. It doesn't help.
And that's really what we want to unpack in this deep dive. We've sifted through all the material you shared to figure out, okay, what is overthinking according to these sources? Why do our brains kind of default to it?
And maybe most importantly, what can we actually do about it?
Yeah. So we'll look at definitions, some really helpful analogies they used, real-life examples from the sources, and crucially, the practical tips they suggest.
Think of it as the concentrated wisdom from your sources on how to maybe, just maybe, step off that mental hamster wheel.
Okay, let's get into it. So defining overthinking. What kept coming up in the sources was this feeling of being, well, trapped.
Trapped by your own thoughts.
Right. Dwelling too much, going over and over past stuff or future worries, usually trying to force some kind of control or certainty that just isn't there.
Yeah, it's not just thinking, it's repetitive kind of circular thinking that isn't productive.
Uh-huh.
The hamster wheel analogy popped up a lot in your sources, and it's spot on, isn't it?
It really is.
All that spinning, using up so much energy, but you're not actually moving forward at all. You're just trying to think your way out of feeling uncertain by going round and round the same points.
Yeah. And the sources contrasted that with what they called natural thinking, using this image of flying a kite.
Yeah, I like that one. Thoughts are like the kite. Let them flow, catch the breeze, and they can, lift you up, take you interesting places.
But overthinking.
Overthinking, according to these sources, is like you suddenly grab the string and start yanking it, twisting it, trying to force that kite exactly where you think it must go, instead of just letting it fly.
And we know what happens when you do that to a kite string.
Right. If it gets tangled, the kite starts to wobble, maybe falters. Sometimes it just crashes down.
So the idea is we do that to our own thoughts.
Kind of. We tangle them up in all the what-ifs and the should-haves and could-haves. Makes it really hard to see clearly, let alone, move forward.
Which leads straight to something else your sources really emphasized. Overthinking just doesn't work. It's not a good problem-solving tool.
No, it really isn't. It might feel like you're being thorough, analytical, but like your sources showed, it usually creates more problems. They gave that example of Emma, the student, preparing for an exam.
Right. She knew her stuff, apparently, but her brain just got stuck.
Exactly. Instead of, say, reviewing her notes or doing practice questions, she just spent hours imagining failure. What if I blank? What if the questions are impossible? What if I completely fail this?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So her overthinking wasn't helping her prepare at all. It was just creating this massive anxiety, sleepless nights, all before she even sat the exam.
And that's typical, the sources suggest.
Very typical. Locks you onto outcomes you can't control, traps you in worry instead of freeing you up to actually do something productive.
And then there was James, the entrepreneur. He got completely stuck too, didn't he? Paralyzed.
Yeah, big business decision to make. And he went deep into analysis mode, reading lists, plans for every contingency.
Sounds thorough.
It sounds thorough, but the sources said weeks of this intense thinking didn't actually bring him any closer to a decision. In fact, he got more confused. Just the sheer number of what-ifs he generated. He was basically trying to think his way to a guaranteed perfect outcome.
Which never happens.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
impossible. So for him, overthinking just led to total inaction, indecision.
It's like trying to build something complex by just staring really hard at the instructions instead of picking up the tools.
Perfect analogy. Yeah.
So, okay, if it's so useless, why do we fall into it so easily? What drives it?
Your sources were pretty clear on this. Fear. A lot of it comes down to fear.
Fear of what, specifically?
Fear of failing, fear of being rejected, fear of not being good enough. Just fear of the unknown, really. And here's the twist, right? The paradox they mentioned. Overthinking doesn't actually shield you from those fears.
No, it makes them bigger. It amplifies them.
Right.
They use that analogy, remember? trying to keep dry in the rain using a colander.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good one.
The harder you try to use it as an umbrella, the wetter you get, right?
Overthinking is like that colander for your fears. It doesn't protect you, it just makes sure you get absolutely soaked in them.
And it feels like modern life turns up the taps on that rain sometimes. Social media got mentioned quite a bit in your sources as a big trigger.
Oh, absolutely. It's like this constant stream of everyone else's highlights, isn't it?
The curated perfection.
Exactly. Perfect holidays, amazing job news, flawless families. And the sources pointed out how easy it is to compare your own, messy reality, the behind-the-scenes stuff, with their polished end result.
And that just feeds the overthinking loop.
Totally. That little voice saying, wow, they're doing so much better than me. What's wrong with me? That's pure overthinking fuel.
Like Rachel, the example used, scrolling through her phone before bed.
Right. The sources described her seeing friends getting promotions, celebs on yachts, perfect family moments. And instead of just scrolling past, her mind starts comparing, worrying about her own life, her career path, feeling inadequate.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And it just pushed her deeper into overthinking about everything she felt she was lacking. She got overwhelmed.
Okay, so if fighting the thoughts makes them worse, like trying to hold back waves, and modern life keeps adding fuel, how do you actually get out of it?
Well, this is where the sources offered a different perspective. Not trying to stop the waves, but learning how to, well, surf them.
Surf them.
Yeah, that metaphor came up quite a bit. The idea is your mind is like the ocean. Thoughts, feelings, they're like waves. They just naturally come and go. Overthinking is like trying to flatten the ocean, trying to stop the waves, push them down, control every ripple.
Which is, yeah, impossible and exhausting.
Totally impossible. So learning to surf, as they put it, is about acknowledging the wave. Is there seeing the thought or feeling without immediately judging it or fighting it.
Just noticing it.
Noticing it, understanding it's probably temporary, like a wave, and then choosing how you want to respond or where you put your focus, instead of just getting knocked over by it.
They had an example for this too, right? Stella, the young professional.
Yes, Stella. She'd apparently agonize after every work meeting, replaying everything.
Did I sound okay? Was that a dumb question? What if my boss thinks I'm clueless? That kind of spiral.
Exactly, that spiral. Those thoughts were like waves just crashing over her constantly. But the sources said, by shifting her focus to surfing, like acknowledging, okay, there's that worry again, but choosing not to dive into analyzing every single word she said.
What happened?
She started to trust herself more. She realized, okay, maybe one awkward moment in one meeting doesn't actually define my entire competence. She learned to ride out the discomfort.
That sounds like it ties into the idea of letting go that also came up.
Absolutely. And letting go, importantly, doesn't mean giving up or ignoring problems. That's not what the sources meant.
What do they mean then?
They defined it more as accepting the things you genuinely can't control. And maybe even more importantly, trusting yourself to handle challenges as they come up.
Instead of needing everything figured out in advance?
Precisely. It's moving away from needing absolute certainty before you act, towards trusting your ability to adapt while you act.
Okay. And they had that muddy jar analogy for this part too, didn't they?
Yes, I loved that one. Imagine a jar full of water and dirt. If you keep shaking it frantically.
Stays muddy, can't see through it.
Right. But if you just set the jar down, let it be still for a while.
The dirt settles, the water clears.
Exactly. Our minds are like that jar, the sources suggested. When we stop the frantic shaking, the overthinking, our thoughts have a chance to settle down. And that's often when clarity emerges.
That makes a lot of sense. But it also sounds like, well, it takes practice. Going from shaking the jar to setting it down isn't instant.
Oh, definitely not. It's a skill. Like untangling a really messy knot one bit at a time, it's gradual.
So what were some of the practical strategies the sources recommended for actually doing that, for starting to untangle the knot?
Okay, several key things came up repeatedly. First, something really simple but quite powerful. Pause and start small. Yeah, when you feel that spiral starting, just take a conscious deep breath. That pause itself can break the momentum. Then, instead of getting overwhelmed by the whole big worry, focus on just one tiny immediate thing you can actually do right now.
Break it down.
Break it down. Another big one was to actively question your thoughts.
How does that work?
When your mind is racing with worst-case scenarios, step back and challenge them. Ask yourself, is this thought actually helpful? Is it helping me move forward right now? And maybe even more critically, is it actually true? Like, based on facts?
Yeah.
Or is it just a fear talking?
Like, Emma, instead of I'm going to fail everything, asking, okay, is that actually happening right now? And shifting to, I can review this one chapter.
Exactly. It's like being a bit of a detective with your own thoughts,
Mhm.
fact-checking your fears.
I like that.
Yeah.
Fact-checking your fears.
Yeah. Which kind of leads to the next one. Focus on what you can do. Shift your energy away from ruminating on stuff you can't control, future outcomes, other people's reactions, and put it squarely onto the concrete actions that are within your control right now.
Makes sense. What about shifting your internal state, your focus generally?
That's where practice gratitude came in. A few sources specifically suggested making it a daily thing. Like maybe write down 3 things you're genuinely grateful for each day.
How does that help with overthinking?
It actively trains your brain, little by little, to scan for the positive, for what's good and present in your life, rather than constantly scanning for problems and threats and things that are wrong. It helps interrupt that negative bias that fuels overthinking.
Okay. And given the social media connection we talked about,
Boundaries,
yeah,
yes. Set boundaries, that was crucial, especially around things like screen time and social media.
be deliberate about it.
Yeah, consciously limit your exposure to those things that trigger comparisons or feelings of inadequacy. Like Rachel needing to maybe put her phone away an hour before bed. Reducing the external noise makes it easier to quiet the internal noise too.
These all feel like very practical ways to start, setting that muddy jar down.
They're tools to practice.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's quickly recap some of that specific language the sources used. It was quite descriptive.
Yeah, definitely. We heard about thoughts getting tangled, or like that kite faltering, how the mind can spiral downwards into anxiety.
Hmm.
They called overthinking a paradox. Feels useful, but isn't. We talked about overthinking itself as dwelling, being stuck on that hamster wheel, which often leads to indecision.
Right.
And then the shift towards acknowledging thoughts, not fighting them, the colander image for fear, the muddy jar for finding clarity, those words really paint a picture of the experience.
They really do. So, putting all these pieces from your sources together, what's the big message here, the core takeaway?
I think the most profound thing is that overthinking isn't just who you are. It's not some fixed personality trait.
It's a behavior.
It's a behavior, a mental habit. And the really hopeful part of that is because it's a habit, it's something you can actually learn to manage. You can change it.
You can learn to navigate your thoughts differently, navigate the uncertainty of life with a bit more skill, maybe like learning to untangle that knot or surf the waves.
Exactly. And that letting go piece, it isn't about giving up. It's more like an active choice. Trusting yourself, allowing clarity to emerge even when you don't have everything perfectly mapped out. Relying on your own ability to handle things.
Okay. So, building on all that, maybe here's a final thought from this deep dive for you to take away. What thought or maybe worry are you holding on to really tightly right now?
Mm.
What might happen? What space or clarity could open up if you just practice letting it rest for a bit, like setting down that muddy jar, trusting yourself to figure things out as you go without needing all the answers right this second?